I think America has two best weapons during the Cold War. That's a soft war. During the Cold War, America first had Hollywood and then have Voice of America. And in Europe, they have Radio Free Asia as well. Hollywood carried America image, a positive America image. The second secret weapon America has was Voice of America. But in that time, Voice of America was very powerful in China. It shaped the mind of an entire generation. The China market does not come free. The China market comes with a price. People managing Voice of America try to depoliticize Voice of America. Actually launched a very successful program called History's Mystery, which has over 100 million views.
Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. We have with us Sasha Gong again, and we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. And I'm not going to spill the beans yet. Let's first welcome Sasha Gong. Sasha, it's been a while since you been on our channel. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much. And I saw one of my videos got more than 100,000 views. I'm very happy with it.
Yes.
And thanks everybody for the nice comments.
No, they love you in our channel, Sasha, and we would love to hear more from you. And today, I'm sure you're not going to disappoint. So viewers, now I'll spill the beans. This is what we're going to talk about. Propaganda war lost, US and China. So Sasha, you've been in the United States for probably a little bit more than half of your life. And before
1987, I came here.
Oh, wow.
So I was in China for over 30 years, in the US since 87. So it's longer. I think I'm myself more American than Chinese in many ways.
You don't look a day over 35.
Oh, thank you. I know that's not true, but still feel good.
So it's a matter of concern. To cover one lie, you have to tell 10 more lies, and to cover those 10, 100 have to be heaped on top. Is this what you see happening, Sasha, or do you think I'm completely wrong?
Yeah, it's happening, and it's happening in a very massive way. And what I see is that not only China, I think the United States of America is losing its image war, but we can call that a propaganda war. And if you look at what's happening, in the third world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, the United States no longer leads that much. That worries me a lot.
And so let's take a look at, with your permission, let me go to the next slide, because that's where it really starts happening. So,
yeah, that's the title page.
Yes. So here it is. We have some interesting findings to share with you folks. So I'll let Sasha do the talking. And Sasha, take it away.
Yes. And first sign of the information war lost, or the propaganda war lost, is how the Chinese view America today. And it just came out yesterday. A research center came out a new poll. In this new poll, 68% of Chinese hold negative view on the United States. And among people who are born after 1990, the number is something like 80%. It's very, very bad. And 2021, I think there's also a Gallup poll. That poll was not too bad, but it's 58. So if you look at China today, how people see the United States of America, the view is very negative, which is a very new phenomena. Remember when we talk about how other countries to see China, doesn't matter whatever the government say. If you ask people, say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in all third world countries, most people, not everyone, but most people would say, hey, America, great country. But nowadays, not that much. Just think of one very telling fact is, China sent in hundreds of thousands of students to America now. And when I came 30-something years ago, and everybody, when we came to the States, we thought we are going to paradise on earth. And when I first came here, remembered before I came here, friends from the US wrote us, this is paradise. Well, we can eat chicken all the time. Chicken in China was expensive and very rare at that time. And we have so much, and here is free. We can say whatever we want to say. Nobody bother. We have so much so many books and materials to read. It's freedom and prosperity. But nowadays, when you talk to Chinese students, the majority of Chinese students studying in the States would tell you China is a better country. And even when they live in the States, they would say a lot of negative things. It's very alarming.
Let me ask you a question, Sasha. The people who come to study in the United States are those who are probably from the upper strata of the Chinese society. And for them, when they go back, there is a cushy job available because they're going to work their contacts, their networking, their parents' connections, and so on. When did this tide change where they said that US was good and that now US is bad? Which year do you think?
Well, I think mostly changed, in Obama's time, I would say. If you look at all the research and the views, and even like in 2015, you'll see most Chinese still have the favorable view over the US. And but we would see, there was no number in earlier years because it was very hard, say 1980s. But in that time in China, especially in universities, it is very hard to find someone who didn't think US was a better country than China. And I don't remember such a person in my university, Peking University, anyway.
It's very unfortunate. Are we done with this slide? Shall I go to the next slide?
Let's go to the next slide, where we stay a little longer on this slide.
Yeah.
So let's first look at the Cold War time. The Cold War time, where we all talk about war and military competition, arms control, nuclear weapons. People talk a lot about that during the Cold War. But in fact, in the Cold War, the more powerful weapon is the soft power. We talk about soft power, and it's a soft war. When you talk about it, what do I mean? I think America has two best weapons during the Cold War. That's a soft war. During the Cold War, America first had Hollywood and then have Voice of America. And in Europe, they have Radio Free Asia as well. So first, let's talk about Hollywood. Hollywood, as we know, traditional Hollywood movies. And when I was in China, I left China in '87, and before that, perhaps I watched only 10, at most 15 Hollywood movies. But those movies make a huge mark among the Chinese population and other, population around the world as well. Because at that time, Hollywood carried America image, a positive America image. America is a place of just. America people are brave, are just, and they rescue the world, right? Cowboy movies, whatever movies. And I remember, and also Hollywood produced some very good movies. I remember the last movie in China, perhaps I think I watched was Tora Tora Tora. And well, I was a history student, and I studied history. That was one great history lesson. Anyway, so in that time, Hollywood helped America to spread a very positive image in the world and in China as well, and helped America to establish itself as the shining city on the hill in the 1980s. If you go to China in the 1980s and go to universities, I don't think you can even find, it's very hard to find one person who's negative to America. Even they want to criticize America, which most people don't. They would say a lot of good things about America first. So America in that time they won the propaganda war, the Cold War. They won the soft war, and they have the soft power. The second secret weapon America has was Voice of America. And Voice of America, it started in 1942 during the Second World War. And the Chinese service started even earlier than that. It's in November 1941. And when China was engaged in war with Japan, and the Voice of America started. Actually that time is not called Voice of America yet. It's only called China Broadcasting. So it broadcast to China, and during the Cold War time, if you ask any intellectuals, Chinese my age, and almost everyone could tell you their experience of listening to Voice of America. Voice of America became the source of truth, the source of America value and entertainment. At that time, I remember Voice of America has one best program called Jazz, the America Jazz program. So the beginning of that jazz program is this is Voice of America Jazz program, America Freedom. So it carries the image of freedom, and we all love it. And in that time, remember, China, if you listen to Voice of America in that time, you may be arrested, and you may be in jail. Actually, I put a link online when I was working for Voice of America. We made a film. We made a film called Those Who Listen in Darkness. I actually put that one of the PowerPoints. I forgot which one. Anyway,
which language did you use to broadcast on Voice of America?
Voice of America in different time have different languages. Currently, they have 40-something languages. And the Voice of America broadcasts all sorts of foreign languages. 40-something.
No. I meant, Sasha, when you were on Voice of America broadcast.
I served as the China branch director for a while. So in fact, I in the history of Voice of America, 75 years now, 70 something years. I was the only one Asian female, non-white, non-man China branch director. So it's still be managed by white men. For some reason, I think Voice of America leadership had think white men can manage, even they don't speak Chinese, and they think they can manage the Chinese broadcasters better. It's a great irony. It's kind of laughable, but it's a great irony. Anyway, but in that time, Voice of America was very powerful in China. It shaped the mind of an entire generation. So if you look at the history, well, first, knowing how many people listening, it's not close to be not possible, because, we even interviewed someone who was sentenced to death for listening to America. And we know there are some people who got shot only because they listened to Voice of America and spread the words that we listen to Voice of America. So in that time, the budget of Voice of America is only like something worth half a missile. With the budget of half a missile, Voice of America won the heart of so many people in the world. It's very, very valued. In a way, in that time, Voice of America and Hollywood as well, both carry America value, carry a very positive America image. America is just, America is great. America is shining city on the hill. So, well, if we talk about a generation ago, and well, people will be shocked how the population viewed Voice of America. I think, well, we actually won the propaganda war at that time. I actually have a funny story to tell. It's about Radio Free Europe. In 1981, when Poland, during the Solidarity movement, Poland was...
Lech Walesa, yeah.
Yeah, Lech Walesa. And actually, I got him on my show a few weeks ago, on his show, at my show with Elma. He talked to the Hong Kong people for half an hour. I was very happy. I interviewed him once. I had a long interview with him. Anyway, so in 1981, when military Hunter 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙤𝙤 launched the martial law, arrested more than 6,000 Solidarity members, Radio Free Europe once said, people in Warsaw, if you listen to us, when we say turn off your light, turn off your light. When we say turn on and off. So for the whole evening, the entire Warsaw is on and off, on and off. That's how many people are actually listening. And Voice of America saying, during the Tiananmen movement in 1989, the students actually put Voice of America on their loudspeaker on Tiananmen. So for a while, for my generation, for a few decades.
Sasha, how many students actually died in Tiananmen massacre?
Well, the Chinese government admit 230 something, but according to my friends in the Tiananmen Square and the look around, they believe it's about 1,000.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Young lives extinguished.
Not only students, but also other demonstrators and the bystanders as well.
Wow, really sad.
Yeah. But in that time, think of it, Voice of America was the source of truth to students in Tiananmen. So, at that time, the Chinese government admit in China about 17 million people listen to Voice of America. I believe the number could be a little bit larger. How much larger, I don't know, but it's 17 million in the end of 1980s. Even the Chinese government, you see, when the government always jam software, jam this, jam that, but people find a way to listen if you have good content. At that time, Voice of America had good content, and the Chinese government is always lying. Anyway, so in that time, I think we won the propaganda war. That was the time. And how do we lose the propaganda war? Let's go to the next slide. Why, the Chinese people, why the image of America was so positive in the 1980s, even in 1990s, or even before that under Mao? How it came to this? Well, as we first talk, how it came to, America being such a negative. I could not say people thought it was devil, but not that far away from it. And the Chinese, how would the negative image carried out in China? And how do we lose the propaganda war? It's a very important question that our government is not asking. Well, I have been trying to raise the issue in Congress and in American government for years, but I got very little response. how do we lose it? So the first thing I want to talk about Hollywood, China's impact in Hollywood, how China impact Hollywood. You know, first thing the first, I think Hollywood itself changed. Hollywood, before Hollywood carried a positive image of America, and now it's growing to be negative. Now, negative is one thing, you know, America haters are always some leftists criticizing America, but America, the image itself changed. Instead of being individual, focus on individualism and freedom and bravery and justice, all this, Hollywood gradually turned into America value, America image into like gay, transgender, or crazy, or whatever. Well, that's something we are very familiar with, the entertainment industry. If you turn on TV, turn on Netflix and Amazon, you will see tons of those. You see some positive image, but they are kind of thin compared to the image they have Hollywood carried before. Now, the vast majority of Hollywood provides this, in many people's eyes, sort of a estranged image of the United States of America. And carry out, an image of America which is not traditional, that anti-tradition, which was self-indulgence, which, you know, government incompetent, that sort of image, you see. And that image, that kind of image change made a huge difference in the world. Because let's face it, Hollywood is still the main entertainment producer in the world. And China, years ago, China had determined that it will use its money and its market to influence Hollywood. Let's look at the Chinese market. Well, before 2019, China has the biggest movie market, second to the United States of America. And since 2020, China surpassed America and became the biggest movie market. So we have the data here. If you look at this data, is 2020 Hollywood market share in China. In America, the China market is about $3 billion. In the United States, it's $2.3 billion. So that's a huge difference between the China market and U.S. market now. China is now the main bread supplier for Hollywood. And it's sort of I found it quite interesting that last year I went to Hollywood. I tried to launch, I wrote a movie script. So I was asking Hollywood, you know, if they're interested, Hollywood executives. And the answer I got is that, well, anything about China, we got to be cautious. You see, the China market does not come free. The China market comes with a price. If you first, China limits it how many movies. Go ahead, your question.
Very quick question, Sasha. I will not interrupt your flow.
Yeah.
See, if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, even before COVID hit, most of the movies were on this, great warriors like Transformers or X-Men, X-Men. These are all like mythical characters with extraordinary powers. Is this also a way to try and neutralize the thing? Because only if you have people, locations, you're going to have to take a side, possibly. But if you have all these, gadget kind of characters or Spider-Man, it makes it easy for Hollywood to kind of satisfy the Chinese interest. What do you think?
Well, you're right. And the Chinese government control which movie you can see, which you cannot. And right. China only give a limited number, usually like 10 big movies or something, a limited number of Hollywood products to go to Chinese market. But here is the key. Before any movie asks for permission to go into China, you know what they need to do? They need to submit the script to the Chinese and to the Chinese propaganda department, to the Chinese government, say, hey, this is our script. This is our people. Would you allow us to go into the China market? The Chinese propaganda, the Chinese censorship, the officers would take a look at, we don't like this character. We want that soft one to, well, we want that one to be changed a little bit. And Hollywood does it. Hollywood does it. Everybody knows there are 3 T's. If you want to go into China market, there are 3 T's you have to avoid. First T is Taiwan. You cannot mention Taiwan. The Taiwan issue cannot be mentioned. Second T is Tiananmen. You cannot mention the Tiananmen or whatever happened at the student movement. They were mainly anti-democracy movement. The third T is Tibet. Anything about Tibet independence and Tibet something. Remember years ago, there's a big blockbuster movie, 2012. There was Tibet. Well, they have to make it part of Chinese. So the Chinese government, the decision they make, to impact Hollywood is, you cannot enter the China market unless you present the Chinese government to be gentle, reasonable. You project a positive image of China. You can criticize American government as much as you want. You can project whatever negative image of America as you want, but the Chinese, you have to be positive. Not only the Chinese would control what you write in the script, they also control who play the characters. And remember Richard Gere, right? The Hollywood big star Richard Gere used to be very, very famous and handsome guy. Richard Gere. Well,
he was a Buddhist. Richard Gere is a Buddhist, isn't he?
Not only he's a Buddhist, he's a follower of Dalai Lama.
Yes.
That's why he's censored. His movie cannot play, and his movie doesn't even go close to China. So what happens is that Richard Gere doesn't get casted. So
becomes ostracized. Yeah.
Right. Have anyone seen any recent Richard Gere movies? I don't remember any.
I don't remember either. Yeah.
Right.
I think some Netflix and Amazon series are now coming out, I think. Although I have to go back and check.
Yeah, I don't remember any big blockbuster.
Oh, yeah. From A-list, he has come down several notches, unfortunately.
Exactly. It's no longer the A-list. So that's how China control. Meanwhile, China also wants to put its own stars into American movies to change the image. Remember the movie Independence Day?
Yes,
the second sequel. They have a beautiful Chinese actress there and singing positive songs about China and all this.
Oh, you're talking about the sequel to Independence Day? Sequel to Independence Day? Oh, I haven't seen that one. I should see that. Will Smith, right? Will Smith.
Well, it's not a very good one. I don't even remember, but the Chinese invested in it. So it comes to the second part of how they change Hollywood. The first part is they change Hollywood with the power of the market and the censorship. The second part is the investment. Starting from about 10 years ago, the Chinese companies, of course, when they have that much money, they have government backing. The Chinese companies begin to invest joint production, invest joint venture in Hollywood studios. And Hollywood studios now heavily rely on Chinese money. I can't find how many billions the Chinese invested in, but I know some cases. I know they invested billions, and of course that's a trade secret. Studios won't disclose how much money they have, but they do have, because if we see the movies, we see all the Chinese names there. So the investment, well, control which movie script you play. And even with some very good movie script, I know some, for example, we had the blind activist Chen Guangcheng. That's the film about the movie script about him, Christian Bale. The star was pushing it, but doesn't get made. Because Hollywood studio, even this project does not have Chinese investment. Other project with. So we know Hollywood doesn't have that many studios, only a few. So with some investment, the Chinese control them. We don't even remember what was the last movie, major blockbuster, negative view on Chinese government. I give you one example. Remember a few years ago, and there was a remake of the Red Dawn?
Yes.
Red Dawn, before in the 80s was Soviet Union and all that. And the Red Dawn, the script was rewritten with the Chinese as villains. And the studio had problems with that. And later, well, that was, in their views, it was a good script. So they made the villain North Korean, which made the whole thing totally unbelievable. Because North Korean, everyone would know, would not have that kind of power to invade America. Chinese would be a lot more convincing, but they can't. They have to change the villain. So if you look at the investment part, and Hollywood had been changed very fundamentally by the Chinese market and Chinese investment. And also the third thing is personality. And I don't watch that many movies, but if you watch some new movies, especially sci-fi movies, you would spot lots of Chinese actors and actresses.
Yeah.
Movies like Mulan.
Right.
Well,
Mulan is a China-based story. Right. Yeah.
Yes. And they use Chinese actors and actresses and project very positive image of China and the Chinese heritage. And well, as Chinese, Americans may not be aware, but as Chinese, when I watch them, I said it's laughable because you recognize the propaganda language in all those Hollywood movies, believe or not. Well, how like the state being a patriarch and how society works, it's Chinese communist invention instead of real tradition. So we see things like that, and we see Hollywood change the image of China. It's not a sort of the Chinese learn from Hollywood. So the propaganda, the way they influence Hollywood, it's not, say, the sort of a hardcore propaganda, but very soft to present China, the Chinese government, Chinese system as reasonable and nice, considering, and that sort of a phony Chinese tradition. So we see Hollywood changed in two ways. One is Hollywood became a lot more anti-America or anti-traditional America. And on the other hand, it projects a positive Chinese image. And no wonder we are losing in this propaganda war. So now let's go to the next slide. We can talk about Voice of America. That's something I know very well. And I have to proclaim here that I got fired by Voice of America because I disagree with with the management, how they deal with information from China, and had a big fight. Let me give you one example of how 2016 election. I scheduled myself to be on TV, Voice of America, for 2 hours. I ended up staying on air for 5 hours without any break, because the election keeps surprise
Right.
people.
They were throwing up a lot of surprises. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so what happened?
Did you expect that, Sasha? That 2016 will be such a surprise?
Oh, let me be very proud of myself on this, because the day before the voting, on Monday, voting was on Tuesday. On Monday, I sat on TV. The tape is still there. I said, I think from what I went to the field a lot. I follow all the campaigns. I believe Trump may win. And lots of people said, "You nuts?" It's not, because that morning I just came back from West Virginia, so that's another story. But I follow campaign a lot. I follow Hillary's campaign and Trump. I follow everybody's campaign. I talk to many ordinary voters. I thought Washington was wrong. So for this prediction, it's on the record. The tapes is still online. You can find it. And actually, the funny thing is that Elmer saw me. He was in mainland and Hong Kong. I don't know. He saw me predicting Trump winning the day before.
Wow.
Yeah, and that morning, actually, the morning of voting, New York Times gave Trump a 12% opportunity to win, 12% chance to win.
Versus 88. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
Wow.
Somehow,
let's get back to our story on Voice of America. You had a fight?
Oh, not only I said I was giving you an example, is that night I was on TV until 2 o'clock in the morning. So next morning I went back to the office early morning. The director for Voice of America, Amanda Bennett, would go to each service, said, "Oh, well, we know the election, don't be depressed, you'll be okay." And when she talked to me, she said, "What do you mean by we'll be okay? I'm glad we have a new president." So hated me for that. Anyway, but if you think of it, Voice of America, from what I know, perhaps it's 80% Democrats, and very, very sympathetic to China.
I see the same thing with NPR also. I've stopped listening to National Public Radio.
Yes, Voice of America is just the English service is sort of a 2 tiers down than NPR. They have the top writer might be NPR's bottom writer, something like that. Oh, because if you are a true journalist in English, you would not go to work for Voice of America. But if you're a top journalist in Chinese, well, if you look at the Chinese side, if you're a journalist in Chinese, writing in Chinese, and not inside China, who do you want to work for? You only have a few choices. You have Voice of America, you have BBC if you're in England, and you have Deutsche Welle, French Radio International. That's it. And then late Radio Free Asia later. And Voice of America, actually in that time, Voice of America's manpower is doubled. It's more than all international China service around the world combined. So I had 100 people working with me. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so there are a lot of people. So Voice of America here, during the Cold War, I'm ahead of my slides. To the Chinese, it represents truth and news and American value. And here I actually put a link to the film for those who listen in the dark.
Yeah, and what we will do, viewers, is we'll give you that link in the description so you can click on it. You don't have to enter it in.
Yes.
Go for it.
But nowadays, what Voice of America did is how it changed. From that, when I went to Voice of America, you remember I just said 1989, the government admit that 17 million listeners of Voice of America in China, right? So when
is it
I
17 or 70? Is it 17 or 70?
17.
17. Got it.
17 million. 20 something years later, so 2011, I was appointed the director of China branch in Voice of America. As I said, the only Asian and non-white, non-man director. So I went there and I asked them, what's the viewership now? What's the listenership? He said perhaps 1 to 2 million, because 1 million will not be 2 million, 1 million and 1.5, something like that. I said, doesn't make any sense. Voice of America used to have 17 million. How do you lose 90% of your audience? Then I find out, within Voice of America, people who are sympathetic to the Chinese government, they try to depoliticize Voice of America. What means depoliticize? It means fewer, less news, and more type of entertainment or education programs, TV programs made like how to make pizza, and teaching English, how do we say this or say that, and how do I date boys and girls and stuff like that. No wonder people don't want to listen to it or don't want to watch it. And I was looking at it and said, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. So I repoliticized it. I said, well, let's do this. Let's promote American democracy. So let's promote American democracy. Let's promote American values. Let's drop all this cultures, something, because it took so much money to make something, and those were made to please the Chinese, the Chinese government. In a way, they have a working relationship with the Chinese government. I said, no, let's forget it. I'm not going to have a working relationship with the Chinese government. Let's promote our country, America. So I started programs like American democracy and American elections, and also started documentary serial programs. I doubled the TV shows with no more money, no new money. I doubled the TV service, and I actually launched a very successful program called History's Mystery, which has over 100 million views.
Oh, wow.
And 3 years later, because we hire someone like Gallup to do surveys inside China to see how many listeners. So I'm very proud to see that 3 years later, after I took over the service, we got 24.3 million.
Oh my
viewers.
Goodness, 2,400% growth.
Yes, 22%,
Wow.
something like that. 22 times growth.
Yeah.
So
That's why I said 2,400%. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very proud of it. And in that time, my viewership is a lot bigger than CNN and MSNBC and all this combined. So, so it's a good.
So then why did they fire you in 2016? I mean, you got them back 17. To where they were. 17. What happened?
What happened is that, I got a Chinese whistleblower talking about Chinese, and they said, no, because the Chinese embassy intervened, Chinese embassy and Chinese government, Chinese foreign affairs ministry, and everybody in Chinese got involved and put pressure to America, to Voice of America, said, no, you cannot do that. So, well, and when they talked to me, I said, no. I have to do that. And it's launch a big fight anyway. well, that's an interesting case. We can have a program on that later. But anyway, what happened is that the research data came back. Well, the viewership, because of all these programs, keep rising to 55 million.
Wow.
And but 2021 research, after I left, the new research came back. Every 3 years they have a research. They came back said we could not find any audience in China. They lost all 55 million viewers.
My goodness.
In China.
Was there a blackout of sorts, do you think?
What? I didn't get
blackout, like radio blackout. See, for example, let's
jamming,
say
you mean?
Voice of America comes on internet, it comes on radio, right? So
yes.
Radio, they can jam the frequency, so nobody gets it.
Well, you see, Voice of America in China is always blocked. That was a norm. That was a norm. That was just, well, when I was there, it was blocked as well. And in fact, when I was there, the Chinese government blocked it more because I politicized it, and all the Chinese, well, used to have some partners. None of them work with Voice of America anymore. So, didn't care. I think people want that. So, actually, they said, what you do, it will destroy Voice of America because, all this political stuff and value stuff, and people won't see it. They want entertainment. And I got very stubborn. I just say no. And anyway, got a lot of arguments, but the numbers prove I was right. Anyway, so we lost that. We lost Voice of America, and even nowadays, what they also do is that, well, whatever anti-China views you have to have some pro-China views to balance it. That's called balanced news and called journalism. So what happened is that nobody wants to listen to the balanced thing. On the one hand, on the other hand, that's not what people want. But we lost that tool as the propaganda war. Meanwhile, we allow the Chinese to establish their propaganda machine within the United States of America. The Chinese Central CCTV has a huge office. They have twice as many people as Voice of America. They also use big bucks to hire American journalists to badmouth America. And our government does nothing to counter it. The Trump administration tried to do something. Trump administration demanded the Chinese propaganda machines to register as foreign agents. But nobody could actually close them down. This is something I don't understand. You see, the Biden administration closed RT, the Russia Today.
Yes.
Why didn't they close down the Chinese propaganda machines, which is known to harm America? So actually, that should be in the next slide. The next slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to you about the next slide. So now you see you have Radio Free Asia and Voice of America. You see the woman there with an umbrella trying to advertise, and she's the one who, the Biden administration, she was fired by the Trump administration, the head of Voice of America, and the Trump administration actually wants to put me back to Voice of America and fire her. And now the Biden administration, it's nominating her to head up the entire U.S. international broadcasting network. Her name is Amanda Bennett. A little bit background about her. She's most famous for marrying Don Graham. Don Graham is the heir of Washington Post, Catherine Graham's son. And what happened is that later he sold Washington Post to Jeff Bezos. And then he established his business in China. Well, her husband had multi-million, if not billion-dollar business with China, with Chinese education system and with partners like Chinese Party School. They are making fabulous money from China. And that's the person who the Biden administration wants to lead the international broadcasting system. I am speechless. Anyway, the last slide that actually America's view on China, this is, I have to put some positive news in the end.
Right.
The Chinese propaganda machine, which tried to influence America, is not that successful. I think largely thanks to the Trump administration to awake American people. Now, close to 80. If you look at it, this is a Pew Research or Gallup research anyway. And America's view on China, close to 80% of American people have a negative view on the current Chinese state. So when I say our propaganda war, we lost that war, and China hasn't won this war in the States yet. And we should not allow them.
So viewers, this is a timeline from left to right, years, and now Sasha says the latest number is 80%.
Close to, it's 78%, close to 80%.
Yeah, and so that is kind of cut off here. Apologies for that, but you get the idea. So let's get back to summary. A lot of work to do, Sasha, and I don't know, by November, maybe things will change a little bit, and the pro-China stance might change and move towards a anti-China stance. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thought is actually we got to understand the most powerful weapon. It's not the nuclear weapon and all this. They are powerful, but they may wipe people out. They can't change people's mind and heart. We need to win people's minds and heart. And the first thing first, America got to remain free so we can help the world to be free. If we don't remain free, the world will go dark. So my urge to anyone who's listening, especially American citizens, is to go vote. Go vote and keep this in mind. We have to keep our country free. So we have a freedom to promote. When we promote our freedom, the world got brighter.
Absolutely. What a wonderful way to finish this off. Thank you so much, Sasha. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe this program. And also, please click on the bell button for notifications. If you think that you found good value in this program, you can express it using the super thanks button. Thank you very much, Sasha. And as always, a pleasure talking to you. We'll be back with more such hangouts with Sasha in the near future. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you.